and said, "It must be a big crab." And that's just what it was. A big, upset, confused, and very tired crab. Silly Susie turned it over with her toe, then carefully picked it up, making sure it couldn't reach her fingers with its pincers. She carried it back up the beach, well out of the way of the waves, and set it gently down, then waited to see what it would do. It looked up at her, and she thought it was actually smiling. And she had the oddest feeling, as if it was thanking her for lifting it away from the water. Just then, she heard her dad calling to come back to camp for supper. So she patted the crab on the head and said, "Now, you stay right there tonight, and I'll be back first thing in the morning to see how you're doing." She then ran back to the campground to join her family. Now, you should know that a lot of people like to walk up and down the beach very early in the morning so they can pick up the best shells that washed up on the shore during the night. This next morning was no exception. There were dozens of people out on the beach, just waiting for the sun to come up so they could start their shell hunt. When the first rays of sun appeared, they were already strolling along the water's edge, picking up pretty shells or interesting pieces of driftwood or seaweed. One young boy almost stepped on our friend the crab, who had once again been snatched up by a big wave when the tide came in and pushed the water way up on the beach, where it sucked and tugged and pulled him back down towards the water. The boy reached down and picked up our crab, saying, "Golly, here's a poor sea crab washed up on the shore. He'll probably die if he can't get back in the water." So he drew back his arm and threw the crab out into the surf, where the water currents drew him further out into the ocean. Oh, our poor crab almost drowned, but started at once to swim toward shore. However, crabs are not very good swimmers, so by the time he finally reached shore, he was just exhausted and lay still, trying to catch his breath and rest. But, oh no! Along came another shell hunter who thought he had found our poor crab who had washed up on the shore. So he said, "I'll just help this crab." And he threw him once again way out in the ocean. Our poor crab, almost drowning and very weak and tired, he set out again to try to reach the beach in firm, dry sand. Twice he thought he would just give up and sink to the bottom and die. But then some inner instinct kept pushing him on until he again was barely able to crawl out of the water and partly up the beach. But oh, not again! This time an old woman found him, and saying,
"Oh, this poor little fellow. He's washed up out of the water where he'll surely die."
She picked him up and tossed him back into the water once again. Oh, our unhappy crab! All these people thought they were helping him because they believed he was an ocean crab that lived in the sea. But he was not an ocean crab. He was a land crab who lived in a hole way up on the edge of the sand where the sea oats and other grasses grew. How was he ever going to get back home? Now, while all this was going on, Silly Susie was finishing her breakfast and was getting ready to go back to the beach to see how her crab friend was doing. She picked up a pail and a tiny toy shovel and happily skipped off towards the shore. But her crab was not where she had left it.
Golly, now where do you suppose he went?
And she frantically ran up and down the sand, calling,
Where are you, Crab? Please come back to me. I do want to help you if I can.
Well, somehow the drowning crab knew that Silly Susie was calling. It felt warm and good inside, knowing it had a real friend that cared, and became determined to make it back to shore once again. Struggling through the waves, it managed to kick and float its way back until it was rolled over and over up onto the sand, where it lay more dead than alive, but still able to think of the little girl who had helped it before, and to send a mental message telling her where to find it. And, believe it or not, Silly Susie did get a strange idea in her head that made her turn around and run back down the beach right to where the crab was lying. "How wonderful! I found you!" she cried, as she scooped it up and gently carried it to a log way up away from the water. "You poor thing! You look all worn out. But your legs aren't broken, and I think with a little food and rest, you'll be okay." The crab just looked up at her and thought smiles. And Silly Susie just knew that love and trust was shining out through its eyes.